Take a leg.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank those individuals that are tuning in across the province on our live feed. Obviously, the times are different now, and we're having to figure it out, as we've said on a number of occasions, that we've got to figure out how to do it in a different way that keeps everyone safe. Even as we open up, it's going to be a little time before we do get that opportunity to get together and meet. So thanks again for the trustees today. It's an agenda that we expect will be concluded in an hour, but we'll take our time and run through it. So first off, everyone's got their board packages and the agendas? Okay.
I do.
Can I get a motion to accept the agenda? Moved by Ray, seconded by Pam. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Next order of business is the consideration of the minutes for March 28, 2020. They would have been circulated for those that are online or watching. They've been circulated to trustees prior to the meeting. So if there are any errors or omissions, they would have notified and we'd have some indication. Hearing no errors or omissions, can I have a motion to accept the minutes as presented? Moved by Tom, seconded by John. All in favor?
Aye.
Those against, if anyone's against, please raise your hand. Okay, none against. Thank you. The next order of business, there is no business arising from the minutes, so we're going to move on, and which is the director's report. So we'll turn the floor over to Tony.
All right, I'm going to share my screen here now and present the director's report. If I can just find it, that'd be great. Let's see. Screen one, okay. Present.
This is what learning at home does.
All right. Here we go. All right, do we have a visual?
Yes, we do. You're good to go.
Okay. A bit of an abbreviated report given the medium. Topics, planning for September, a brief look at our infrastructure priorities, and looking forward into next 3 years strategic planning process. So in terms of plans for September, we have been working on those now for some time. Everybody would absolutely desire 100% return of all students to all classrooms. But we cannot predict the track of COVID-19. We've asked the Department of Education and Early Childhood Development through a series of written correspondence, together with a detailed report for 3 pieces of data that will are key to us moving forward with our planning process. Now, first and foremost is finalized detailed guidance from the Chief Medical Officer of Health. This guidance really is how does the 5 levels of COVID-19 in the province and the response, how do they translate for education in the K-12 system? Secondly, we put in submissions regarding funding for equitable access for our students, as well as for some reliable devices for our teachers to be able to operate should we encounter a situation where we have to operate in whole or in part in a virtual environment. And thirdly, the department is responsible for the curriculum. We are the implementers of the curriculum. So from a curriculum design perspective, if there's going to be any modifications to the curricular requirements, provincial assessments, or things like graduation requirements, we would like to know those in order to move forward with a plan. Our priorities will always be centered around the health and safety of students and their families and our staff. Right now, in preparation, we are doing professional learning for our teachers. Each staff or a collection of staffs are meeting with their director of school, aided by program specialists, looking forward to operating in a online environment. Despite the fact that we've had Google Apps for Education now for 3 years, there's nothing like a situation like this to really underscore the need for virtual learning and the pedagogy around that. So that is underway right now, and all staffs will have their full day session face to face with those individuals, and resulting from that, they will identify whatever gaps they have and work towards those in the time available before we reopen in September. A lot of considerations go into this plan, and these are just some of the factors. Obviously, what happens with the virus and the pandemic is a big factor. But busing, the difference as well that we have regionally, we have about 100 schools that even with the physical distancing measures, should they remain in place as prescribed currently, we would be able to operate normally with normal school operation. There are other areas, however, where there's large concentrations of students, where the physical space is going to be a limiter and a challenge. So we would be exploring things like shift systems as a possibility. Now, again, I say, depending on the medical advice, we would aim for as many back for as long as possible, ideally 100%. There's all sorts of other factors as well, such as food services. So suffice to say, multiple scenarios. I have instructed staff to develop what would 100% worst case scenario virtual learning environment look like going forward. And it's important to underscore that what we've experienced to this point was learning at home. What we're planning for is something different. So what parents and students have just gone through, and teachers, was the result of a quick exit from school and a rapid readjustment. What would come in moving forward is a much more deliberate process, a much more structured process, and it would essentially be virtual learning, virtual teaching and learning, as opposed to learning at home, which is what we, and look, I think the teachers and principals, all the school administrations, those that support them, did a marvelous job. There were a lot of great successes. So in terms of communication, we're expecting Department of Education Early Childhood Development guidance towards the end of June. We are making our plans right now, and any obviously the inputs will inform those. We're preparing for multiple scenarios, and we must pivot on a moment's notice. Whatever we can communicate now before school closes, we will communicate in terms of planning considerations going forward into next year. Okay, shifting gears into infrastructure priorities. And this is a lovely frame-up picture on the top there of the project underway at Bay d'Espoir, the new school there. So Bay d'Espoir, the work is ongoing. Brook Construction have foundations and footings in. Still looking at a September 2021 move-in. And the next one, Bishop Field, the main job is substantially complete. The painting and cleanup is near completion, and teachers are now, facility staff are looking at moving before the end of the school year. And hopefully we will be back and using that facility in June, full up in their home station in Bishop Field in the heart of the city of St. John's. Coley's Point, work is ongoing. The original substantial completion was end of October 2020. Given the delays that we've incurred now, it's now anticipated for early 2021. The Corner Brook Bus Depot, there's a bit of 5-month delay on that, so now it's December 2020. Gander Academy, work is ongoing. Marco is the contractor there, and they've the original 2 gyms are remaining, and there's basically a new school being built on. The original date was December 2020. Looks more like now February of 2021. And then following on that, the rest of the project involves a demolition of the old school, and that is earmarked now for the summer of 2021. Paradise Intermediate, work is ongoing with Lindsay Construction. There are some delays, but it still looks on schedule for September 2021. This is of note, this is the first tilt-up school being built in the province, where it's, the walls are assembled on the ground and it's tilted up and put together. So that's the infrastructure update of capital projects. In terms of strategic planning going forward, we're following the school development model, which includes a number of different elements. And this is the provincial model. We have our strategic plan that matches this model and conforms to it and aligns. And then we, of course, we expect our various school development plans to align with our strategic plan. The three strategic directions that we've outlined are student engagement and success, equity, health and well-being, and organizational effectiveness. So next steps, we did do some consultation through Thought Exchange, and that document as to what we heard is being prepared and assembled right now. Ultimately, the strategic plan will require board approval, a process down the road into the fall. It is then submitted to the government of Newfoundland Labrador. And the only other thing that I should mention, of course, is that we're still ongoing with our strategic plan, but obviously the worldwide pandemic, it would affect what could be achieved in the first year. So we had to be nimble and agile enough to adjust our strategic plan going forward. Just one last item in terms of note, we did our Kinderstart registration for next year, and the numbers are a bit down. We're about 600 less registrants than we were last year. Now, keep in mind, these are kindergarten students that will be entering kindergarten in September of 2021. So what we've done is we've reopened the registration. Obviously, people may have been preoccupied with other things during this particular COVID crisis. So we're distributing that. We did a news release and we're advertising the fact and encouraging families with children of that age to, if they haven't registered, to do so, because we need confirmed numbers. So that'll remain open for the next few months, and we'll get some confirmed numbers, and we'll be able to make some decisions as well around programming going forward based on that. Of late and important in the world at large is the Black Lives Matter movement. This aligns with our core values. We're all about two key core values of respect and inclusion. We are consulting with outside groups. We want to listen and learn. We know we can do better. We're asking the question, what can we do better? We're collaborating right now with Dr. Quaco from Sharing Our Cultures as to some learning forms that we could distribute to our community. And that, sir, Mr. Chair, is the director's update, subject to your questions.
Thank you, Tony. What I'm going to do is I can pretty well see all our trustees around the table from the video feed. So if anybody has a question, just raise the hand and we'll make sure that you're muted and we'll do it. Has anyone got any questions for? Okay, we're going to move to Hayward, and you either can mute yourself, Hayward, unmute yourself, or I can do it for you when I find you. Okay, just a second. Okay, good.
I think we're good.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Tony, for that report. I really appreciate the work you're doing, particularly as you're planning for September. And I was quite interested in your comment about what your plans are for September. And I do understand, and I appreciate your definition, I guess, of what was happening or what is currently happening caused by the closure of schools due to the pandemic. And I do understand that there is a difference between learning at home and the model that's being used presently and what you have in place for September. And just for the information of parents who may be watching, I think it's important that that it be understood exactly what you said there, that what will happen in September will be different from what has happened May to June of this particular year. I wonder if you could just reiterate probably what the teaching and learning piece will be like in September, in contrast to what has been happening March to June. As I said, just for the information, parents who may be watching, because I think there are a number of parents who are expecting that teaching and learning will take place in a deliberate way come September, but I think they understand that if it's online, it won't be everything that will be covered in the classroom where a teacher would be present with a group of students. I wonder if you can just speak to that for a moment.
Okay, I didn't realize it was muted. Sorry. Yeah, thank you, Trustee Blake. The difference would be, of course, that early on when this was announced in March, quickly on the heels of that, the province and us, we communicated that we were not going to be doing any assessment that would take marks down. It was only to improve and to focus on those who needed it. So assessment is going to be a component, obviously, in the start of a new school year. So that obviously puts a different lens on things. But face-to-face instruction is the ideal, and we hope to get back to that. What we're preparing for is a spectrum of partial virtual to full virtual, if we have to revert to a massive onset of COVID and we're back to level 4 or 5 again. In that scenario, obviously it looks different, but it can't be 5 hours in front of a machine all day. We looked at other jurisdictions that had the curve early in respect to COVID, and when they returned, or what they did online, and it was in some cases there would be regular scheduled classes, but it might be where the first few minutes is an intense online piece and faced through a virtual medium, and then the students might have to come offline, work independently, and rejoin. So it's not totally 5 hours glued to a screen all day long, but it will be a more deliberate fashion. And the teachers have been looking at different pedagogies. A lot of it would be involved flipped classroom. So the concept of flipped classroom would be during the time that we are together, you will demonstrate your learning to us. During the time that we are separated virtually, the onus will be on the student to review. It could be pre-recorded sessions or go through links on their own. And then if we have an opportunity to be face-to-face, then it's almost like homework in reverse. You'd be demonstrating your learning and doing the homework in front of the teacher. So there's many different possibilities. It's difficult to find them all, and each teacher will also adapt to the age group and to the setting and to the circumstances that are involved. So it's difficult to give a definitive answer exactly what it looks like in September, just that we're preparing for a full spectrum.
So Tony, as was discussed, obviously, with the board previously, we're also working for a more detailed plan over the next couple of weeks. So some of the actual details will be thrashed out so that we'll have something to present to parents and families as soon as possible. Any further questions? I'm not seeing any hands up, so thank you very much for that, Tony. The next order of business on our agenda is the committee reports, and the executive committee doesn't have a report because there were no executive meetings between this board meeting and the previous. I will call on Trustee Tessier to present the Finance and Operations Committee report if he would do so. So we need to get him talking again. It's probably easier for you to do it to yourself. There you go. Perfect.
All good? Good. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We just have a one motion to pass forward today. But before we get into that, I'd like to take the opportunity, obviously, to thank Terry and all of his staff for all of the hard work they've been putting into keeping everything going and the buildings and the operations and the finance of the whole organization over the last couple of months. I know it's been punching a lot of hours, and if you could pass along our committee's thanks, and I guess the board's thanks to your staff, Terry, we'd really appreciate that. The motion is coming out of Central Health. There's an easement for Lewisport Academy. They're putting a long-term care home up there, and they want to bring the water and sewer line across the district's property. So the motion goes that the board approve the easement required for Central Health in Lewisport as per the submitted drawings as recommended by the Finance and Operations Committee. So moved.
Could I get a seconder for that motion? Seconded by John.
I'll second, yes.
Any questions regarding the motion? Seeing none. All in favor of the motion? Those against? No one's against, so therefore motion carries. Steve.
And that's it for me. That's for the finance and admin. There's just a couple other documents here, but they'll be posted on the district's website as necessary. So that's it for finance and admin.
Thank you for your committee's report work during this period, which is tough for everybody, but we still got to move forward. The next committee, the chair of the committee is unfortunately is either stuck in traffic or is unable to get to the Skype session today. So what I'm going to ask Ed as the support to that committee, just to run through quickly on the report side. Obviously, as a staff member, he can't move or do anything like that. So when it comes to the moving, I'm sure Kevin will step in to back that up if possible. Okay. Ed?
All right, good afternoon, folks. I'm assuming everybody can hear me.
Yep.
All right, the Programs and Human Resources Committee met on May 28th. There are no motions obviously coming from that meeting other than, I guess, getting someone to move the adoption of the report. There were a number of information items at the meeting that were discussed, including some business arising regarding the possibilities of looking at French immersion from a CDLI perspective. The committee tasked staff to do some research on jurisdictions that were offering French immersion from a distance platform or through digital platforms, and we went out and we did some research on that and provided it to the committee itself. Some of the majority of the meeting that we held was focused on the district's professional learning plan for the remainder of this school year. There were two major initiatives that we talked about during that part of the agenda. One was focusing on virtual learning, reimagining learning, and preparing teachers for working in a virtual world, if that's where we find ourselves in September. The second part of the information session on professional learning focused on our work associated with getting schools ready for phase 3 of the Education Action Plan, and a significant amount of work that's occurring or had occurred up to that point in time, preparing our teachers who are going to be in phase 3 schools, including some of the mop-up work, if I could call it that, associated with phase 1 and phase 2. There was an item on our agenda that we had to defer simply because our session on the PL ran longer than expected. It's part of an ongoing agenda item that we have around mental health initiatives in the district. So that particular item was deferred, and we'll catch up on that one at our next Programs and HR Committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Ed. Can I get Kevin? Are you okay to move the acceptance of the report, Kevin? Okay, so Kevin has moved the acceptance of the committee report, seconded by Peter. Any questions? If you've got questions, you're going to have to use your mic. Any questions? Okay, seeing none. Next. Oh, sorry, Scott, I missed you. Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a brief comment about the French, the CDLI in French, and I think I referenced it yesterday at the working session. not sure that I came away, I'm not trying to be critical. I'm not sure I came away probably as informed as I would have liked. So I'd suggest that maybe we get together as a committee sooner rather than later to have another go at that, especially given the concerns that Trustee Lake has brought forward with some of the French immersion programs going on in his part of the district. So maybe rather than waiting just before our next regular meeting, maybe we could expedite that and get together relatively soon and really try to flesh that out, because it's a good discussion to have.
Okay, I'm sure there'll be no problem for that to happen. Obviously, in light of the next couple of days, the staffing side of this is focused on getting that plan for September ready. But I don't see that being an issue over the next week or so to get a programs committee together, and we'll make sure that Keith is aware.
Thank you.
Okay, anything further? Okay, hearing none. The next order of business is under new business. There is no report from the Educational Foundation because there was no meeting and wasn't a requirement for one. I'm going to turn to Terry Hall to give us an update report from NLISE, please. You're on mute, Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so our Newfoundland Labrador International Student Committee met and passed a couple of motions to utilize some of the funds that we have on some district-wide initiatives that we had to fund. Some of the funds approved were for our larger deep learning and moving the district ahead with its deep learning initiative with Dr. Fullen, which was approved by the committee. Our thought exchange platform, which has been broadly used by the district, I'm happy to say, in terms of even schools, principals, teachers are using it to gather information even from student thought process that they're doing. So we thought a great use to fund that as well. And we also approved the use of some of the money for our student youth annual gathering that they have on student leadership. So those were some of the initiatives that we approved out of this funding, and we brought to the subcommittee of this board, which was endorsed at the time. Also in the meeting, we approved the financial statements, audited financial statements for the international student at the time. Nothing out of the ordinary. Revenues were up a little bit due to an increase in the number of international students that attended our schools and had seats for that particular year, ending June 2019. We also tabled the operating budget for our new auditors for the operating year July 2019 to June 2020. And again, it was an operating budget that was consistent with past years. So that's it, Mr. Chair. That's the business as an information to the board that was conducted by the International Student Board.
Yeah, thank you very much, Terry. And some of the activity around this, obviously, is next year is going to present a very different scenario for our school system as it relates to these international students. So good discussion was had about how we're going to try and bridge that gap and make sure we don't expose ourselves with expenditures that we don't have the revenue to go to. So that was a good session.
Sure.
Any questions from trustees around the table for Terry? Tom, you're going to have to unmute yourself. And are there any further ones? Okay, Tom, you're ready to go.
Just a question. How many international students do we have in the province right now? And do we expect the same for next year?
So the enrollment that we had for September 2019 to June 2020 year was averaged around 400, little over 400 international students. Primarily high school, but we do get a small percentage that attend our junior high. Right now, given the COVID-19 pandemic going on worldwide, we still do have conditional acceptance pending what happens between now and September, for about 375. So there hasn't been a huge impact, although we do, it is only conditional, and we have heard from some groups of students from different parts of the world that they may be looking to defer until a January or February start. So skip the first half of the year and come in January, February for the last semester. That's pending discussion, which could get us down into about the 250 range.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you for the report, Terry. Next, the School Milk Foundation report is, there's no requirement because they haven't met, so there's no report. The next item on the agenda is that we have to move a motion with our board schedule for next year, and I believe that Hayward might have a motion.
Yes, Mr. Chair, would like to move that the schedule presented be adopted.
Thank you, Hayward. Do I have a seconder to that motion? Seconded by Steve. Any questions? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion? Those against? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Hayward, for that. The next item on, obviously this is a compressed board meeting because of the nature of the business, and the medium that we're going through it. The next order of business is we and all the trustees have all had circulated the correspondence to in and out from the district. Are there any questions from trustees regarding specific correspondence? Not seeing any and hearing any, and obviously that for the people that are out there, that this correspondence has been circulated to the trustees before. So in a lot of cases, if there are questions, they'd have been fielded prior to, but there's no questions there. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the formal agenda. Are there any comments, Tony, that you would like to make at this time before we just move to adjourn?
No, thank you, Chair. Simply that in the planning, as we move forward for September, we are organizing some consultations with the Federation of School Councils, with school council parent members, and we'll also be reaching out to the principals to have 2 separate sessions on consultations on informing that process.
Okay. Thank you, Tony. For me, thank you for taking the time, obviously at lunchtime, and those people that have tuned in. Thank you for taking the time, because obviously in this difficult time, it's still critically important that we do everything we possibly can for our young children and students at school or at home. So the work now has to really get nailed down for September. And that's what's taking place. And we're certainly keeping focused on that end result and end goal. Once again, really appreciate the work and the extra commitment that comes from our senior staff, and not just our senior staff, all our staff from right across the district, because everyone in our 10,000 employee base is learning as we go through this piece, whether it's the janitors in the school having to change their operating procedures because of the fact that we're going to be doing things differently, or whether it's the reception people in the school offices. The calls and stuff like that are going to be tough. So making sure that information is correct and in the right hands and the most important people is going to be a task that we got to make happen. So thank you to our senior staff. Thank you to all of our staff, and thank you to the trustees across the province for tuning in. Take care. I haven't been corrected because I don't have a motion to adjourn. Moved by John George, seconded by Peter. All in favor? Though you don't need it, but there we go. Thanks, guys.
Have a good weekend, everybody.